comes at an important moment when we see a central AI policy challenge to be enabling broad, economy-wide adoption of artificial intelligence. We believe that the winners of the AI race will be those countries, those governments that adopt AI both inside the government and for the private sector as effectively and as broadly as they can. That is the focus of our session today, enabling enterprise AI adoption for impact, which also serves as the launch of BSA's Global Enterprise AI Adoption Agenda. So there's QR codes and our website. Please feel free to check it out. But we focus on 3 pillars that we think are the most important. The first is workforce. The second is infrastructure and data. And I would argue that data in this world is a type of infrastructure. And the third is practical governance. We provide actionable recommendations for governments to advance their own economies. I am so grateful to the leaders from the BSA member companies who have joined us today to share the perspectives and important work advancing enterprise AI innovation, collaboration, and adoption. And with that, I would like to turn the podium over to William Kimmett, Undersecretary of Commerce for International Trade and a wonderful partner to us. Undersecretary, thank you so much for joining us today and for your partnership.
Great, thank you very much. It's truly a pleasure to be in your company today. Leaders from across the technology landscape, innovators, policymakers, and friends from both the United States and India. We're gathered here on the sidelines of the India AI Impact Summit, a moment that rightly captures the excitement, possibility, and responsibility of this extraordinary time in technology. Thanks to our Indian partners for their hospitality and leadership in hosting the AI Impact Summit, and to the many U.S. companies here today that are working tirelessly to deepen our shared innovative ecosystem. You are the builders of a digital bridge between our 2 great nations. I have the honor of serving as the Undersecretary for International Trade at ITA within the U.S. Department of Commerce. Our mandate is focused on promoting American exports, enforcing our trade laws, and attracting foreign investment to the United States. With a presence in markets around the world and deep sectoral expertise, ITA serves as the U.S. government's primary interface with industry on trade and commercial policy, working to expand market access, address foreign trade barriers, and support economic growth through exports and investment. Under the vision and leadership of President Trump and Secretary Lutnick, we have been fulfilling that mandate as never before. Now, BSA itself is an excellent example of how quickly the world can change and how successful institutions evolve with it. BSA was founded in 1988 by Microsoft and originally focused on combating software piracy and enforcing copyright compliance. They now represent companies that are leaders in artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, cloud computing, quantum, and other breakthrough technologies that were unimaginable at the time of its founding. BSA modernized because the world modernized, and you recognize that leadership requires adapting early and not reacting late. Artificial intelligence represents the next frontier built on decades of technological progress. From the early days of the internet to the rise of personal computing and mobile devices, to the rise of, each wave has laid the groundwork, with AI now at the apex of that evolution, unlocking entirely new possibilities across economies and societies. In Washington, artificial intelligence is now framed as a national priority, and that is reflected in a concrete policy agenda. In July 2025, President Trump released America's AI Action Plan, a detailed roadmap to keep the United States at the forefront of AI while working more closely with partners and allies. The plan is already being implemented through a series of executive orders that direct the U.S. government to limit procurement of ideologically biased AI models, accelerate the construction of the data centers and power systems that AI requires, and promote the export of full-stack American AI technologies to trusted partners. Under President Trump, U.S. policy today places a strong emphasis on co-development, co-investment, and co-creation with trusted partners. From expanding AI infrastructure to building resilient semiconductor supply chains to advancing joint research and emerging technologies, our message is clear. Innovation grows stronger when nations innovate together. When trusted partners like the United States and India lead with openness and collaboration, AI becomes a powerful driver of growth, innovation, and shared success. By bringing together U.S. capital, research, and global markets with India's talent, scale, and digital ambition, this partnership is unlocking opportunity for our companies and our societies. India's role in the global AI landscape is both distinctive and consequential. Few countries combine world-class talent, democratic values, and the ability to deploy technology at real scale the way India does. For U.S. companies, India is not just a market, it is a partner in innovation. India's deep reservoir of talent, its democratic values, its digital public infrastructure, and its extraordinary scale make it one of the most compelling environments anywhere in the world for co-creating next-generation technologies. Many of America's most innovative companies, those working at the frontier of AI, semiconductors, and advanced technologies, have established a significant presence in India. In several cases, their largest operations outside of the United States are right here. That speaks volumes. It reflects a confidence not only in the opportunity and scale, but in India's central role in shaping the future of technology. The United States and India are uniquely positioned to lead the AI revolution. Both our nations believe that technology must serve humanity and not the other way around. We believe in free thought, open societies, transparency, and accountability, and these principles must guide the way we develop and deploy AI. And while governments can create frameworks and build trust, it is businesses and innovators who turn shared vision into reality. So thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and I hope the positive momentum of this week's summit carries forward as we forge further integration between the US, India, our great companies, and our innovative ecosystems. Thank you very much.
Undersecretary Kevin, it's so wonderful to have you here with us in Delhi on the occasion of this historic summit. It's so exciting to have all of you with us here in Delhi. The work that the International Trade Administration does is so important. So we thank you very much for joining us today, but we thank you for the partnership and the support for U.S. industry around the world. With that, I think it is time for our first panel to begin. So, Danielle, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Victoria. My name is Danielle Johnson-Kutch with DocuSign, and I'm joined today by leaders from Mike Haley from... There we go. Sorry about that. So my name is Danielle Johnson-Kutch with DocuSign. I'm joined today by leaders Mike Haley from Autodesk, Klaus Newman from SAP, and Chandler Morris from Workday. We are going to discuss the AI potential and how we drive that into the workforce. I'm going to start and just open up so that we stay right on time and direct the first question to Mike. Please share one successful enterprise AI adoption example and 2 key lessons for scaling similar impact.
Okay, so at Autodesk, I lead our research organization as well as our AI development. So as part of research, one of the things we do is at a certain point of the maturity of our technology, we do example projects with customers to prove out if it works. And with AI moving so fast, I think it's appropriate to use an example from research that's sort of indicative of the future. So something we discovered some years ago in the process of creating buildings and designing and building infrastructure, the decisions that ultimately impact the cost and the sustainability of a building are actually made in the first month. Most of the decisions, in fact, 80% of the decisions are that affect that is made in that point. So what's key is to have some technology that is able to give you insight into the consequences of your decisions at that point. So what we did is we partnered with a customer that wanted to build affordable housing units out in Oakland on the east side of the bay, in a site that is right next to a highway. It's an old factory site. They wanted a carbon neutral building, and they wanted to build the entire thing soup to nuts in 9 months. which anybody who's worked in construction will tell you that sounds utterly impossible. So what we did is we partnered with a prefabricated module kind of home company, and we built an AI with them that could actually analyze years and years of data of what it took to create these kind of buildings, how to create these modules sustainably as well, and then worked with them to build a custom AI that could simulate the choices that you made. So if you orient the building a certain way, or if you choose a certain shape of the building, everything you do will change, say, for example, the solar gain of the building, or the amount of concrete you might need, or the amount of steel, or whatever you. So what we found is this AI was allowed them to actually generate a design, iterate hundreds, in fact, not hundreds, even thousands of scenarios of how these buildings could be designed, and the AI was able to play forward all of those decisions through the construction process and ultimately into the running of the building. The net of it is we were able to design a set of buildings that there are 3 units that are going into this lot of land in a beautiful arrangement that avoids the sound and the noise from the highway, because noise simulation was actually part of the AI, and it was actually a system that has now allowed us to break ground on this project. We're actually in phase 2 now of the construction, and we're on target for making actually a net negative building, in fact, within the time frame that they had proposed. So this is a great example of how this can work. Now, to your last part of your question, to scale this, the challenge of scaling this is all about gathering data at every stage of the process, from the factory where the prefabricated modules are, to the field, to making sure that you always have context. What makes these AIs work is having the right context and being able to bring this data forward into that context. And that's going to be one of the, especially in this kind of world, the physical world, getting hold of that context is difficult. Planning for it, making sure it works, it's part of what we need.
Thank you so much for that great example of bridging that gap between AI potential and real-world examples. Let's turn next to Klaus. Across global markets, what top 2 workforce conditions determine the success of enterprise AI adoption?
Yeah, thanks Danielle for the question. And thanks also to BSA of having me here. I think it's a great initiative to do that. I could basically follow up where Michael just left, right, from the architecture example. I really like this because indeed software architecture, I always imagine it as a house that has a foundation, something needs to be built on top of it. But now, for the first time since we have AI, I think something has also changed in software architecture, because we speak all of a sudden much more than before about trust, about values, about bias, and all of these things, which previously it was more about security, of course, and efficiency. Yeah? And now I come to my point that if you believe in, let's say, certain values, and this AI system should reflect my values, then we also have to recognize that values are different in different parts of the world. The values, what is acceptable, for example, in India, what an AI system comes up with an answer, with an idea, with an innovation, is probably very different from what is acceptable in the United States or in Germany or in other parts of Asia and so on. And therefore, we believe also very strongly into this global development. Coming to your workforce now, we have a very diverse workforce in more than 20 countries of the world, where we also have innovation happening day in and day out. And I think that is, for us, super important, right? That we do innovation in US, in Canada, in Brazil, in Chile, in many countries of Eastern Europe, in Paris, also in Germany, of course, and in many countries in Asia. India is also, for us, a very large innovation hub. But by the end of the day, it is that what has to come together that makes truly a global system that also reflects the different values that are prevalent in these different cultural areas across the globe.
All right, thank you. We will turn next to Chandler. And your question is, given the rapid transformation of the workforce landscape of AI, what strategic shifts and data modernization efforts must India undertake to build a skills-based workforce and achieve its full AI ambition?
I wish I had a segue like yours, because that was pretty nice to sort of move from construction to. I think we're all going to walk away from this vibrant summit wondering, sort of separating the signal from noise, and for me, I'm walking away really excited, because I think we've had sort of the conversation around, started with safety, right? How we, risks, how do we keep this, And then it moved to governance, like how do we employ and deploy and do it with a trustworthy way, reflective of cultural norms. And now the focus is really on diffusion. It's like, so how do we drive uptake? How do we see ROI? And I'm super excited about India's focus on skills. At the end of the day, diffusion of AI is going to be based on an AI-ready workforce. I think at the same time, the flip side of that coin is there will be changes in the future of work. There will be changes in the nature of roles and skills that are needed and whatnot. And so that focus on skills also drives the agility for employers, for job seekers, for incumbent workers. I think there's sort of three things that are top of mind when it comes to how to take a skills-based approach to work to scale. And I'm thrilled to see India sort of wrapping its arms around this scale question. And frankly, I think if we can do it here, we can do it anywhere. The first is a skills taxonomy. There's a governmental role in sort of aligning the language of skills, and we are increasingly, both in India as well as in other areas in APJ, as well as in the United States, seeing a very vibrant conversation of how do we align on what, the language of skills. Luckily, AI is also ready-made to play a role in that, because it's usually noisy data that needs to have inferences driven out of it. I think the second piece is really getting that labor market data modernized to a point where we can see in real time emerging roles and skills. I mean, that's, and I, from the US, we're talking about this regularly. Like, our labor market data is, 6 months old, maybe. That's a lifetime in AI diffusion and in AI adoption. And I think the last piece, which we've heard the Minister for Skills here in India specifically call out, is you got to have it aligned with employer demand. Like, at the end of the day, you can do whatever you want on skills development, but if there's no market for those skills, it's just wasted resources, and no one has those resources to waste. So we are really focused on how do you build those public-private partnerships to bring in the private sector to ensure that we're building those tools. And the key to it is, and I think everyone in this room and everyone in industry and everyone in academia, we all know a lot of these questions aren't answered yet. I mean, we're still seeing the conversation on ROI. We're still seeing use cases develop daily. And so anyone that's telling you they know exactly what the future of work is going to look like in, a month from now is, I don't know what crystal ball they're looking at, but we don't see that. And so getting those data sources aligned with employer need on a way that can iterate over time is going to be essential.
All right, thank you very much. And that will conclude our session today. And let's give a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you.
I'm David Masters, and I'm going to host the next panel. So as we sort of get set up, we'll just do a bit of a preamble before we line up. So the next panel, we're going to focus on data infrastructure and governance. So really those underlying principles that support AI adoption. So things like security and privacy and data protection, and the things that all of us as enterprise software companies understand that our customers need to know to successfully adopt AI. And given the timeframes, we're focused on rapid AI adoption, so this is going to be a rapid AI adoption panel. With me, I have Srinivas from Salesforce, Josh Kalmer from Zoom, Jennifer Mulvaney from Adobe, and Sam Kaplan from Palo Alto Networks. So the first question goes to Srinivas. Could you please share with us one successful enterprise AI adoption example and a couple of key lessons that have come out of that?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, I think. Thanks for inviting me. I think because we're in India, I'll just give a quick example here. Hero FinCorp is one of the leading financial services company in India. So the way they do is they give multiple loans, And usually the loan dispersal process and approval process would take more than 2 days for two-wheeler loans. Using Agent Force, which is our platform, they reduced it to 30 minutes. And they're dispersing millions of loans. And last Diwali Dhanteras is a bumper year for them. I think that's a quick user story we are seeing here.
Yeah, and just building on that, what are some of the key lessons you've sort of seen out of that? Yeah.
The big lesson, like anything else, is every AI implementation starts at data. If you don't have a data foundation, it gets very hard. The other critical lesson is when you do 10 requests, the agent is working or not working, you can easily know. One of the lessons is at scale, when you're doing millions of loans, two things you need. One, you need enough guardrails to ensure that the system these are probabilistic systems. So how do you ensure that your standard operating procedures are followed? That's number one. Number two, which we talked about trust before, how do you ensure that there's no bias in the system? How do you ensure your inclusivity is there? 6 months later, let's say a regulator comes and asks you, on what basis did you give this loan? You need to have auditability, the reasoning traces, so you exactly know on this particular loan, this is how the AI reasoned. And so we have to build systems to track all of this. And then how do you test it? If in a regular, people are asking different ways. A lot of the documents are not fully there. So if you don't have the infrastructure, you have to build all these systems in the infrastructure to make it work at scale in a way the business is comfortable. So you marry the power of these AIs and the creativity of these AIs with a deterministic statement of standard operating procedures, and that's how you get the impact. That's ultimately that's what we want to measure, not on innovation and pilot purgatories, but really real impact to the end consumer or the business.
Thank you. And building on that impact, Jennifer, from Adobe's perspective, how can that adoption of enterprise AI, including agentic AI, tangibly expand opportunities for productivity and service quality?
So when we think about Adobe, the types of communities that we serve when it comes to AI, the biggest one by far is the creative community. As many of you know, I'm sure you all are familiar with Adobe. Hope you are. And then, of course, here in India, that means millions of students, millions of creatives. We heard this week the announcement by the IT minister of a creative Create in India mission. And then there's a budget to back that, right? So it's the government really kind of not just talking the talk, but actually walking the walk with putting some money behind what's really important, of thinking about the importance of the future of creativity in the orange economy here in India. And we can't do that without partnership, public-private partnership, right? So the government will do things like provide the policies, the educational curriculum, and of course the funding behind these types of things. But then it's incumbent upon industry to come to the table with the technology and also to offer the types of skills that are needed. So this week, Adobe's announced in partnership with NASSCOM promoting 20 new free courses on the NASSCOM Future Skills platform, which we're excited to put out there. Yesterday, we announced free creative software with AI built in for millions of students here in India. Very happy to do that. So I just think, again, that the bottom line is that public-private partnership, that coming together to do what's needed to bring communities such as the creative community into the AI world.
Thank you, Jennifer. And Sam, you're the security vendor on the panel, so you get the security question, of course. We've talked a lot about the what of AI governance, but for the enterprises in the room today, and the how is much harder. So from your perspective, what does a secure AI by design architecture actually look like in practice, and why is this one of the more critical foundations as AI adoption increases?
Sure. No, thanks for the question, and thanks to BSA for inviting me to be on this panel today. So just because I'm a simple man, I tend to think of things like secure AI by design in sort of buckets of three. So at the highest level, it's understanding how adversaries have been able to leverage artificial intelligence to create vulnerabilities and to exploit those systems. How are cyber defenders, your cyber security teams across the enterprise, leveraging AI to sort of defend those networks? And then how are we securing the AI systems themselves that are being integrated into our networks and systems at an increasingly rapid pace. And now, particularly with agentic AI, like how are those agents then interacting with other parts of the network? Specific to that last bucket on how we're looking at sort of secure AI by design, we tend to think of this in sort of three real foundational layers. Like first, looking at your supply chain integrity. Like, are we treating these AI models more like software code? You wouldn't like put an executable file that you didn't know what the provenance is, yet we've seen enterprises that are going onto something like Hugging Face and pulling unknown models into operations without having full risk assessments of what those models are. So being able to construct sort of your model risk assessment and understand that is critically important. Additionally, you have to know what is operating on your system. How are CISOs and your CIOs getting visibility into all the models that are actually operating on your system? This is through third-party risks, third-party softwares that may have AI models running on the back end, so that visibility is crucially important. Second, you got to look at zero trust. Like, look at the AI factory. Look at the back end where the chips are, the infrastructure. How are the security controls at that layer being implemented? Because these threats and vulnerability can metastasize through that value chain all the way up to the network layer where it's really having an impact. And then last, like, what are the runtime guardrails that organizations are looking at? Are we looking at the prompt inputs and the outputs of those prompts to protect against prompt injection, data poisoning attacks? So looking at those layers. With regard to agents, now agents are adding a level of complexity. I think one of the things that we really need to consider with agents is how are we treating identity when it comes to agents? You know, we did a recent report where we found that even nowadays, agent identities, machine identities are outnumbering human identities on networks 80-1. Do we know what those identities are interacting with and what pieces on your network they're interacting with? What are we implicitly trusting them to do? So I think if we're looking at this in layers and breaking it down, we'll peel this onion.
Okay.
Awesome, thank you.
I am going to break in for a moment to welcome a very special guest to our event, Navy Secretary S. Krishna. We are so pleased to have you here as we are closing out this amazing week in Delhi. I can't think of a better person to be joined by than S. Krishna. Your leadership has shaped India's balanced approach to AI governance. You have overseen the passage of India's privacy legislation, the finalization of rules to enhance user privacy and trust in the digital ecosystem. You are a wonderful partner to us. We thank you so much for joining us today. And with that, I would like to welcome you to the podium to address our audience. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and I apologize for butting in the middle in this fashion, but first let me welcome all of you and everyone in the panel to Delhi. I hope you've had a good week here in the India AI Impact Summit. What we have attempted to do and what our objective was to democratize AI, and I think we brought everybody into the room, standing room only, fundamentally as a way of making sure that people are part of the discussions about what needs to happen with AI and what needs to happen with technology in general. Summits prior to this were basically leaders, some CEOs, some experts, very few members of the common audience or others would rarely have access to many of these discussions. We are fortunate that many of the best minds thinking about AI are people whom many of us are in a position to actually hear from directly and listen to and understand what is happening in this space. There are many, many aspects to it, multiple aspects at multiple levels. We have close to about 500 sessions. So we're talking about at the one end chips and everything that leads to making the hardware relating to technology, which is where AI would work. And then of course, all the applications and the attendant issues relating to security, deployment, and a whole host of issues. So we've sort of covered the whole gamut of what needs to be covered in this past week. we've also had agreement and we've had meeting of minds on a range of issues. And truly, it will take a while for us to sit down and digest all that has been said, the implications of many of the perspectives that have been put out, and many of the very, very interesting perspectives from very interesting quarters in terms of how they are perceiving AI, what they think the threats are, what they think the positives could be. But if you need to look at it, I think fundamentally, whichever way, the nuance and the detail and all of those, the micro elements of what needs to happen is one side of the story. But the other side of the story is, are we for it or do we fear it? And I think the consensus appears to be that we are for it, but we'll take care of ourselves as we go along. And we need to sort of address all of those issues, whether it is privacy issues, whether it is data issues, whether what ultimately happens in terms of guardrails. Each of these things are important. But we shouldn't, at this point in time, block the passage or block the way that AI moves forward. We need to move along with it, understand where we sort of put the necessary guardrails to guide it in an appropriate way, where the guidance needs to happen, where the nudge needs to happen, where the push needs to happen. And that's basically achieved through discussion, through understanding perspectives and figuring out which is the best way forward. And that's our approach, at least the Indian approach, to the way we want to look at AI and its deployment, look at where we can do, find ways in which we can do it best. And alongside that, there's also this whole aspect that ultimately it's about the skills, and ultimately it's about the people who will get it done. And that's where I think we can offer quite a bit to the world. I think there are enough skilled people, as many people as who walked in to watch this. We produce about 1 million STEM graduates a year, engineering graduates a year. So there's a huge volume of people that we bring in and whom we can sort of deploy in a way that works not just for India, but for the world. And that's what we have to offer. We are the third most vibrant AI ecosystem according to the Stanford Index, primarily because on the strength of the talent. And that's the opportunity we want to give our talented youngsters. We continue to be a young country. We will continue to be a young country for the next 20 years at least. And that is something we have to offer to the world. And above all, I think what we have succeeded in doing is to bring everybody into the room, make sure that AI, in whatever shape it emerges out of this, after this summit, will necessarily speak to and will necessarily include people who have hitherto been excluded from this entire race. And that probably is the biggest achievement of this, and that's been made possible by the participation of all of you. So thank you all once again for having come out to Delhi and participated in this event. I apologize for any inconvenience any of you may have suffered over this period, but it's been wonderful having you and wonderful to have hosted you here in Delhi and in India for this event. Thank you.
Why don't you stay here with Global Enterprise AI Adoption right behind you?
Do we want to do a photograph of this?
Why don't we do a photograph here, and then if the secretary is amenable, we'll do a second one. Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Josh. Thank you so much. Would you be? All right, thank you. That's very gracious of you.
Go on the picture with all panelists. Yeah.
Josh. Yeah. So we've now saved hardest question for you, David.
Well,
Give it to him.
Well, look, Atlassian
Yeah,
builds
add more time.
software for agile development, so we have to be agile, and working in government affairs, we always will defer to government when they enter the room. So, Josh, from Zoom's perspective, we've talked a lot about trust. How do governments improve their services, adopt AI, and maintain that security, privacy, and trust?
Yeah, well, first of all, I was just going to say it's actually really fitting that Secretary Krishna made that entrance and those remarks, because I think so much about this week has been about Indian leadership and the Indian approach to regulation, particularly around trust and how we're going to take care of people's data and how we're going to keep it secure, I think has been quite exemplary and is very encouraging. Look, I think one of the things that all of us as enterprise software companies think about a lot is how we can make our customers' lives better. And whether you're talking about the most populous country on earth with 1.4 billion people or a smaller market, the ability to serve government and to think of use cases and to figure out ways to bring the technology not just to the customer but to the citizen, to the student, to the patient in the healthcare system, to the person trying to get their driver's license is paramount. And my boss Aparna was on the previous panel. Some of you may have been here, and she was talking about the balance that we as companies always have to strike between innovation and I think risk mitigation. This is an area where I think it's actually incumbent upon all of us as company leaders to be partners of the governments that we're working with and to help them think through not just how can we get our software products in as many hands and in as many terminals as possible, but how can we build confidence that when it's being proliferated out to millions of citizens, there is certainty that people's data is being taken care of. There is certainty that national security is being taken care of. There's certainty that there will be choice and competition and avoidance of vendor lock-in. That's something that you can, of course, regulate. That's something that you can legislate. But I think for the good of the innovation ecosystem, it's an area where companies have an interest, we all have an interest in corporate leadership and in finding that balance.
Well, I think that's a great note to end on. So with that, I will hand back across to Victoria. So thank you.
About the final portion of our program. We have Ann Robinson with us, the Chief Legal Officer of IBM. Welcome to Delhi.
Thank
Very
you.
excited to have you here. And So I wanted to get your perspective on a couple of important questions in terms of enterprise AI and adoption. So we are seeing businesses around the world invest in the United States and India and markets around the world. But for many of those businesses, they're still trying to figure out what the ROI is. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on how companies can move from experimentation with artificial intelligence to real scaled adoption that's maybe the company's moving.
Yeah, well, first, I'd like to just say thank you for being here, for being such a terrific partner to the business community. And I'd observe the importance of this question about AI adoption. The theme of the summit is impact. And as you know, you can't have meaningful impact unless you have meaningful adoption. And in fact, IBM has sponsored research that shows that only 25% of companies are experiencing the return on investment that originally was intended with the deployments that they have that they've undertaken. And so you're right. I mean, there's no better way to say it. We've got to move out of the experimentation phase and into sort of really scaled adoption. Where AI is embedded into critical infrastructure and work models within a company. We don't need pilots. We need workflows where AI is deeply embedded. So when I think about how important it is, it's finding immediately those workflows that are ripe for automation, that are repeatable, that take a lot of human capacity, that are critical, but really are more appropriate for some of the tools and resources that AI brings to companies. At IBM, we have a program called Client Zero, where when we create new products like Ask HR, we deploy that both internally, but we also deploy it with our clients. And our Ask HR capabilities have reduced human interactions with our HR professionals by a significant percentage. I think eliminating about 2 million impressions over the course of the year. So it's got to be seen as core infrastructure rather than an experiment, a pilot, or a nice to have in order for it to really drive adoption. The other thing that whenever IBM we have an opportunity to talk about things that are critical to AI adoption, you have to think about what the workforce needs to really engage with AI. And so governance becomes a really big part of that conversation. People are not going to use tools and resources they don't trust. So having very clear governance over the deployment of AI within your enterprises is going to help your employees fully engage with it. And I think another thing that's really exciting about this conference is you see the lines, and you see, how many people are engaged on this topic, and so excitement and engagement are great, but they're not enough either. You have to have that transparency. You have to have explainability in order for people to feel comfortable when you embed AI within very core workflows in order to really use it. So those are some of the themes and things that IBM thinks about.
Great, fantastic. So you mentioned workforce. Jobs are changing. How does IBM feel? What are your thoughts on the talent challenge, and what are practical steps that companies can take to make sure that their workforce is ready for an AI-driven future?
Yeah, so the first thing, I'm thinking it's a great question. I was really happy to hear in the earlier panels, 2 panelists refer to it. So Chandler talked about it, Jennifer talked about it, and what they're doing at their companies to make sure that the workforce is ready for technology as it's deployed. But I think the first thing I think about is how we even think about it. So upskilling and training for engagement on AI is not about worrying about job elimination, right? It's really making sure that we have skills transformation in order to make sure that the workforce can engage with these new tools. We did another research that indicated that 40% of the workforce is going to need upskilling in the next 3 years. So this is really critical, and I think the way we think about it is twofold. One is the sooner you can embed AI in those workflows, the better, because you can actually learn by using, right? So you do need, more formalized training, but you can learn just by doing, just by interacting with the capabilities. And then the second piece is that you do need some of that training. You need AI literacy and fluency at scale. So we have programs that are designed to help upskill workers, but we start with skilling in the first place. So IBM is one of the things I love and am most proud about. We are not as focused on degrees. We are focused much more on skills. And so when you take out that sort of elite pedigree-based approach to training, you can just cover a broader cross-section. So IBM is pleased to share that we have committed to skilling 5 million people in IBM, and we think about that over the range and the life cycle of the development of the workforce. So we have programs that are engaging with higher education, but we also have vocational programs, and we will get to 5 million trained people here in India over the next 5 years. The other thing that I think we have to think about when you are trying to make sure that the workforce is ready for capabilities that are evolving as quickly as they are, and that's that you skill, you teach, and then you have to continue to teach. So upskilling and continuous learning has to be embedded in the way we think about engaging the workforce in AI. And the final thing I would say around workforce training and the like is just how critical that public-private partnership is. So I think the very last speaker mentioned the importance of the public-private partnership, and it's profoundly important that you have the engagement of the Indian government. They have been a sponsor, they've been an active participant in this conference, but they are actively engaged in the conversation about the best way to deploy these skills-based training programs in the way that best reflects their policy priorities and their agenda. And so you have active influence and access to the education systems, to sort of third parties that are much better and more effective at bringing the skills programs to the people here, and that's just it's going to have an amplifying effect of the training that we're trying to bring to the country.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for closing our program. Very much appreciate it. Thank you to our audience. There is a Salesforce event on AI agents starting immediately after this, so I would welcome and encourage all of you to stay for that. But Anne, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for what IBM does.
But I know Arvind very well. I know Anand Singh, Dinesh. So I'm in touch with all those guys. But I'm with Salesforce. I run the agent course, AI agents. I know Sebastian Tan. Yeah. So let's take a picture and send it to him. Oh, I was with him just last week. We do AI impact. And what's your number? I'll talk to you together.
Late in New York.
It's coming from your